Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a subject that has been sparking debate across every corner of society. From office boardrooms to bustling markets, from factory floors to sports arenas, and even in the speeches of politicians and global leaders. It's a topic that raises serious, thought-provoking questions in the minds of millions. Universal basic income. Can it really reshape our financial systems forever? Is it the lifeline that could eliminate poverty, or the risky experiment that could destabilize economies? Stay tuned as we unpack this crucial issue, break down the arguments for and against, explore real-world experiments, and reveal what it could mean for you, your community, and the future of money itself. Imagine this. You wake up, roll over, check your phone. Ping! There it is. Another $1,000 drops straight into your account. Not from your job, not from a side hustle, not from some shady crypto pump. It's from the government. Every month. No strings attached. How would your life change? How would society change? And could something as simple as sending people money actually reshape finance? Forever. Welcome to the world of Universal Basic Income, or UBI. It sounds like science fiction, but right now, it's one of the hottest ideas in politics, finance, and tech. So why now? Why is UBI exploding onto the world stage at this exact moment? Let's trace the spark. Here's the thing. UBI isn't new. In fact, it's older than America itself. Back in 1516, yes, 5 centuries ago, Sir Thomas More published Utopia. He wrote that crime doesn't happen because people are evil. It happens because people are desperate. Fix desperation, fix crime. Fast forward to 1797. Thomas Paine, founding father, revolutionary firebrand, wrote Agrarian Justice. He argued every citizen deserved a dividend, funded by landowners, simply for existing. And then, in 1967, Martin Luther King Jr. made it plain. He said, "The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income." So the idea keeps resurfacing. Whenever society hits a breaking point, UBI rises from the ashes. And guess what? We're hitting that breaking point again. Why? 3 sparks. Spark number 1. The machines are coming. For centuries, machines replaced muscle, the spinning wheel, the tractor, the assembly line. But today, machines replace minds. AI writes contracts. AI drives trucks. AI analyzes x-rays. AI flips burgers, answers emails, even creates music. Think about this. The most common job for American men is truck driver. Self-driving trucks threaten that. The most common job for American women? Administrative assistant. AI threatens that too. This time it's not just blue collar versus white collar. It's everyone. So the question isn't what jobs will be automated, it's what if there just aren't enough jobs? Spark number 2. Inequality on fire. Now let's talk money, and it's ugly. The richest 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. During the pandemic, billionaires added $5 trillion to their fortunes. Meanwhile, families couldn't afford rent. The middle class is shrinking. Wages are stuck. Housing? Skyrocketing. Healthcare? Bank breaking. People aren't just struggling. They're suffocating, and UBI is being pitched as the reset button. Not a slow trickle-down, not a bureaucratic maze. Direct, simple, cash. Spark number 3, COVID, the global dress rehearsal. Here's where it gets interesting. For decades, governments said, we can't just give people free money. Then came 2020. The US mailed stimulus checks. Canada launched CERB, $2,000 a month. Spain rolled out a permanent minimum income. Japan, South Korea, dozens of countries, cash transfers. And the world didn't implode. In fact, those payments saved economies. Suddenly, billionaires saw it with their own eyes. The government can actually just put money in your account. Once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. Spark number 3. Let's zoom in on a little city with a big idea. In 2019, Stockton launched a pilot. 125 residents, $500 a month, no strings attached. Critics shouted, "They'll blow it on booze." Reality check. 40% went to food, 25% to utilities, 10% to clothing, less than 1% to alcohol or tobacco. And here's the shocker. Full-time employment went up. Why? Because people could afford childcare. They could afford transportation to interviews. They could afford to take a breath. UBI didn't kill ambition. It fueled it. You'd think only left-wing activists push UBI. But guess who else is on board? Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Richard Branson, Jack Dorsey. Why would billionaires support giving away money? Two reasons. One, maybe they care. Two, maybe they're scared. Because if consumers are broke, who buys Teslas? Who subscribes to AI services? Who shops online? UBI isn't just charity, it's insurance for social stability. Then came Andrew Yang. In 2020, his presidential campaign centered on the freedom dividend. $1,000 a month for every American adult. At first, people laughed. Then, people leaned in. Suddenly, UBI wasn't a fringe idea. It was on the debate stage, in the headlines, on your Twitter feed. Yang didn't win, but he accomplished something bigger. He mainstreamed UBI. Now here's the real kicker. Why does UBI trigger such strong reactions? Because it challenges our core belief. Money must be earned. Our society says, work hard, prove your worth. UBI says, you have worth just by existing. For some, that's liberating. For others, it feels like moral chaos. But here's the data. In pilot after pilot, people don't quit working. They quit panicking. And when panic ends, creativity begins. The fear factor. Let's be honest. UBI isn't just exploding because of hope. It's exploding because of fear. Fear of mass unemployment. Fear of riots. Fear of collapse. Think of it as a pressure valve. It might be cheaper to hand out $1,000 a month than to deal with the chaos of doing nothing. Global sparks, and this isn't just theory. In Alaska, every resident has received an oil dividend, up to $2,000 a year, since 1982. In Finland, 2,000 citizens got €560 a month. Result? Less stress, more well-being, even a slight rise in employment. In Kenya, thousands received direct cash transfers. Result? More food, better schools, more small businesses. Across cultures, across continents, the story repeats. Dignity rises, fear falls. So let's put it all together. Technology is replacing jobs. Inequality is burning. The pandemic proved cash works. Experiments worldwide confirm the benefits. And billionaires and politicians are pushing it into the spotlight. That's the spark. That's why UBI is exploding right now. But here's the $1 million, or should I say, the $1,000 question. What does guaranteed income actually do to people? Do we stop working? Get lazy? Collapse society? Or do we finally unlock human creativity and purpose on a scale we've never seen before? In the next session, we will dive deep into the psychology of UBI. And trust me, the results will shock you. The psychology of UBI, inside the human mind when money becomes guaranteed. Let's get real for a second. When you hear the phrase free money, what's your gut reaction? Excitement? Relief? Maybe even anger? Because let's be honest, money isn't just money. It's tied to morality, to identity, to survival. Our culture whispers, you must earn it. You must prove your worth. No work, no reward. But universal basic income flips that script. It says, you exist. You're human. Therefore you deserve dignity, and here's cash to back it up. That's a psychological bombshell. So the question is, what really happens inside us when income is guaranteed? Do we become lazy freeloaders, or do we become the best versions of ourselves? Let's consider scarcity versus abundance mindset. Here's the first truth. Scarcity changes the brain. If you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, you know this. Your brain is always running one calculation. How do I stretch this dollar? Do I pay rent or buy groceries? Do I fix the car or risk losing my job? It's not laziness, it's bandwidth. Scarcity eats your mental energy. Researchers at Princeton found that poverty reduces cognitive function as much as losing an entire night of sleep. Let me repeat that. Being broke makes you think worse, like you've been awake for 24 hours straight. Now flip it. What happens when survival stress is removed? When you know, no matter what, money will land in your account. That's abundance. That's breathing room. That's where UBI kicks in. Let's look at Finland. From 2017 to 2019, the government gave 2,000 unemployed citizens €560 a month. No requirements. Critics predicted disaster. They said people would sit at home, watch Netflix, and live off the check. But here's what happened. Happiness levels shot up, stress plummeted, trust in institutions grew, and employment? It didn't collapse. In fact, some participants were more likely to work because they had the confidence and security to take risks. The psychology was clear. When you remove fear, you unlock initiative. Let's go through Stockton, California. Remember those $500 checks? One participant said, "Before the program, I was working part-time at a warehouse. I couldn't afford gas to even get to interviews. With the $500, I fixed my car. I found a full-time job. That check changed everything." This is the hidden power of UBI. It's not that people suddenly get rich. It's that they stop being trapped. Think about it. $500 or $1,000 a month won't make you wealthy, but it can remove the chains of scarcity long enough to move forward. Okay, let's tackle the elephant in the room. Won't people just become lazy freeloaders? It's the number one critique of UBI, but history tells a different story. In Canada in the 1970s, a town called Dauphin tested a guaranteed income. Hospitalizations dropped. Kids stayed in school longer. Adults kept working. The only ones who worked less, new mothers and teenagers, so they could raise kids or finish school. In Namibia, a UBI pilot reduced crime rates. People actually worked more, starting small businesses. So the myth of laziness doesn't hold up. When survival isn't at stake, people don't collapse, they rise. Here's something fascinating. UBI doesn't just change survival, it changes identity. When money is guaranteed, people ask new questions. What do I want to create? What skills do I want to learn? Who do I want to become? Some spend more time with family, some pursue art, some launch businesses. Think of it as upgrading from survival mode to growth mode. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs in action. Once the bottom layer, food, shelter, security, is guaranteed, the human mind shoots upward toward creativity, purpose, and self-actualization. Let's travel to Kenya, where the non-profit organization Give Directly is running the world's largest UBI experiment. Thousands of villagers get monthly cash transfers, no strings. Results? Nutrition improved, school attendance went up, stress levels dropped, and small businesses, barbershops, tailors, shops, sprouted across villages. This wasn't theory, this was transformation. Now let's step back. Why does UBI spark such heated debates? Because it challenges our moral compass. For centuries, we've tied worth to work. You earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. UBI says no, you deserve bread simply because you're alive. To some, that feels like justice. To others, it feels like heresy. And that moral clash is why UBI is both loved and hated. Let me put it another way. Imagine life as a video game. Most people start on hard mode, low resources, constant survival stress. UBI doesn't hand you a victory, it just switches the difficulty from hard to normal. You still have to play, you still have to grind, but now the game is winnable. The psychology of UBI doesn't just affect individuals, it ripples through society. Less stress equals fewer health problems, equals lower healthcare costs. More stability equals lower crime rates. More breathing room equals more risk-taking, equals more startups. It's like planting seeds in a garden. Give people water, and suddenly growth explodes everywhere. So here's the verdict. When money is guaranteed, people don't shut down. They open up. They don't become lazy. They become human, creative, ambitious, connected. UBI doesn't kill work ethic. It kills fear. And when fear dies, that's when potential is unleashed. But wait, potential doesn't mean UBI is perfect. There's still one massive question. How do we pay for it? In the next session, we dive headfirst into the economics of UBI. Funding models, inflation fears, and whether the maths actually works. It's not as impossible as you think. Now let's look at the economics of UBI. Can we actually afford it? Let's get straight to the point. Whenever universal basic income comes up, there's one question that always follows. Cool idea, but who's paying for it? Because sending everyone a check every month sounds amazing, until you imagine the government trying to foot the bill. So, is UBI just a fantasy? Or can we actually afford it? Let's break it down. First, let's do the scary math. Take the US as an example. Roughly 250 million adults. Now imagine giving each of them $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. Multiply it out, and you get $3 trillion a year. Yeah, trillion with a T. That's more than the US federal budget for defense, education, and social security combined. No wonder people say, it's impossible. But here's the twist. When you zoom in, the maths isn't as crazy as it looks. Here's the first trick. Gross cost versus net cost. Yes, writing the checks costs trillions, but UBI replaces other things. Think about welfare programs, food stamps, housing subsidies, tax credits. Many could be reduced or folded into UBI. And here's the kicker. Some of the money you hand out just comes back. Why? Because people spend it. They buy food, they pay rent, they shop. And that spending means sales taxes, payroll taxes, and business growth. Economists estimate the net cost of a $1,000 per month UBI in the US would be closer to $500 to $800 billion a year. Still huge, but suddenly not impossible. So, how do you pay for it? Let's explore the options. 1. Tax the wealthy. The simplest model, raise taxes on billionaires and corporations. Amazon pays little to nothing in federal taxes some years. A modest wealth tax or closing loopholes could raise hundreds of billions. Critics say, the rich will flee. Supporters say, they need stable societies to make money anyway. 2. Value-added tax, VAT. Europe uses this all the time. A small tax on goods and services. Andrew Yang's freedom dividend proposal used a 10% VAT. Every time you buy something, a slice funds the UBI pool. 3. Automation and robot taxes. Bill Gates once suggested, if a robot replaces a worker, the company should pay a tax equal to that worker's income. That money could fund UBI. 4. Carbon dividends. Charge companies for polluting, then redistribute that money to citizens. It's like Alaska's oil dividend, but for the environment. 5. Redirect existing spending. Here's a wild fact. The US spends over $700 billion a year on the military. Imagine redirecting just 10% of that. Since 1982, every Alaskan gets a yearly check from oil revenues, usually between $1,000 and $2,000. And guess what? Alaska hasn't collapsed. People still work. The local economy gets a yearly boost. That's UBI, funded by natural resource dividends. Okay, but let's address the big scary monster. Inflation. Won't giving everyone free money just make prices skyrocket? Fair question, but here's what the data says. In Alaska, the dividend hasn't caused runaway inflation. In UBI pilots worldwide, inflation barely moved. Why? Because UBI doesn't create new goods shortages. It just shifts who has the money to buy them. Think of it like this. If a billionaire buys a third yacht, the economy barely notices. But if 1,000 families suddenly buy food, clothes, and school supplies, that money circulates. It's velocity, not just volume. That said, inflation risk is real in housing markets or places with limited supply. That's why UBI often works best paired with policies on housing, healthcare, and education. Here's a killer point. UBI might actually be cheaper than the current system. Right now, welfare programs are complex. Layers of bureaucracy, eligibility checks, mountains of paperwork. UBI skips all that. No forms, no gatekeepers, just direct deposits. It's like comparing snail mail to email. Faster, cleaner, cheaper in the long run. One misconception: UBI isn't just printing money and giving it away. It's about redistribution. Money already exists in the economy, but it's stuck at the top. UBI is a pipeline, taking wealth concentrated in billionaires, corporations, and resources, and sending it back into circulation. It's not free, it's recycled. So what do the experts think? Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize-winning economist, supported a version of UBI he called the negative income tax. Martin Luther King Jr. called guaranteed income the most effective solution to poverty. Even libertarians like the idea, because it eliminates welfare bureaucracy. It's one of the rare policies that attracts support from the left, right, and centre. Yes, UBI is expensive, but what's the cost of doing nothing? Imagine millions unemployed by automation, rising inequality, collapsing trust in institutions, protests, violence, economic instability. Those costs, financial and human, could dwarf the cost of UBI. Think of UBI as a kind of national insurance policy. You pay the premiums now to avoid catastrophe later. So let's answer the question: can we afford UBI? Technically, yes. It's not easy, it's not free, but it's possible. With taxes, redistribution, resource dividends, or automation levies, the money is there. The bigger question isn't, can we afford it? It's, do we choose to? But affordability is only half the story. The real question is, what happens when UBI is actually tested in the real world? In the next session, we will go global: Finland, Canada, Kenya, India, and beyond, to see what the experiments reveal. The results will surprise you. Let's look at the experiments and evidence of UBI around the world. So far we've asked, what is UBI? Why is it exploding? And can we afford it? But let's be real, talk is cheap. If UBI is such a good idea, why not just test it? Well, the world already has. From small villages in Africa to icy Finland, from bustling Canada to oil-rich Alaska, governments and non-profits have been running real-life UBI experiments. And here's the big question: what happens when you give people money? No strings attached. Let's go round the world. Finland, happiness over fear. In 2017, Finland launched Europe's first nationwide UBI trial. 2,000 unemployed citizens, €560 a month, no requirements. Critics screamed, they'll quit looking for work. But the results? Stress levels fell, happiness soared. People felt healthier and more secure. And while employment didn't skyrocket, it didn't collapse either. Here's what one participant said: when you know you'll have that money every month, you stop waking up in fear. You can think about the future. That's the hidden power. UBI didn't magically solve unemployment, but it gave people dignity. It gave them breathing space. Canada, the Manitoba miracle. Let's rewind to the 1970s. Canada, a little town called Dauphin. For 4 years, every family received a guaranteed income. And what happened? Hospital visits dropped by 8.5%. Mental health improved, kids stayed in school longer, adults kept working. The only groups that worked less? Mothers, who used the time to care for newborns, teenagers, who stayed in school instead of rushing to dead-end jobs. UBI didn't kill work ethic, it protected families, it nurtured education. It became known as the Mincome experiment, and to this day, economists still study its impact. Kenya, the village transformation. Now let's head to East Africa. In Kenya, the non-profit organization Give Directly is running the world's largest UBI experiment. Tens of thousands of villagers receive direct cash transfers every month, some for 2 years, some for 12 years. And the results? Nutrition improved, families sent kids to school, stress and depression dropped. Small businesses popped up everywhere, shops, farms, barbers, tailors. One villager said, "Before we struggled every day. Now I run a shop, I can plan for the future." UBI didn't just change individuals, it transformed whole communities. India, a quiet revolution. In 2011, a series of pilot projects tested basic income in rural villages. Households received small monthly payments. The results? School attendance rose. Healthcare usage went up. Women reported more independence. And surprisingly, work effort increased. Because when survival was guaranteed, people invested in tools, seeds and businesses. UBI turned poverty from a dead end into a launchpad. Alaska, the dividend state. Since 1982, Alaska has run the closest thing to permanent UBI in the developed world. It's called the Permanent Fund Dividend. Every resident gets a yearly check, usually between $1,000 and $2,000, funded by oil revenues. And you know what? People still work. Poverty is lower. The dividend is usually popular across political parties. It's proof that direct cash transfers can exist long-term without collapsing the economy. The city experiment in Stockton, California. We've already talked about Stockton, but it's worth repeating. $500 a month, 125 people, 2 years. The results shook skeptics. Full-time employment went up. Stress and anxiety went down. People reported being more hopeful, more stable, more dignified. It became one of the most famous modern UBI trials, and it inspired other cities to follow. What does all of these experiments show? Okay, let's step back. Different countries, different cultures, different payment sizes, and yet the results are consistent. Health improves, stress drops, education rises, crime falls. People don't stop working. That last one is huge. Because the biggest fear about UBI is laziness, but the evidence? It just doesn't back it up. Now, to be fair, UBI pilots aren't magic wands. Some critics say the trials are too small to show long-term inflation effects. The payments are often temporary, so people behave differently. And in some cases, governments cut experiments short before the real results came in. So while the evidence is promising, the jury isn't fully out yet. Here's the takeaway. From Finland to Kenya, from Alaska to India, the story repeats. Give people unconditional cash and they don't waste it. They invest it in health, in education, in businesses, in their future. UBI doesn't just hand people money, it hands them possibility. So what have we learned? UBI isn't just theory, it's not just philosophy. It's been tested all over the world. And while no experiment is perfect, the results are clear. People thrive when dignity is guaranteed. But here's the million-dollar question. If UBI creates winners, who loses? Because make no mistake, UBI shifts power. It changes who holds wealth, who holds influence, and who gets left behind. Now let's explore the battlefield, winners and losers. Who gains from UBI and who will fight it tooth and nail? Money isn't neutral. It's power, it's leverage, it's freedom. So when you introduce universal basic income, guaranteed money for everyone, no strings attached, you don't just change people's bank balances, you change who holds the power. And that means UBI will create winners and losers, champions and enemies. So, who's who? Let's break it down. Everyday people, the big winners. Let's start with the obvious. For the poor, the struggling, the paycheck to paycheck, UBI is life-changing. Families finally afford rent without skipping meals. Parents buy school supplies without maxing out credit cards. Workers trapped in dead-end jobs can breathe, retrain, or move up. UBI isn't about luxury, it's about stability. And for the middle class, it's insurance. Job layoffs hurt less. Unexpected bills sting less. Life feels safer. For everyday people, UBI is a win. Small businesses, the underdog advantage. Here's a twist you might not expect. UBI could supercharge small businesses. Why? Because customers suddenly have more money to spend. Think about it. Every month, guaranteed cash flows into local communities. People go out to eat. They shop. They try new services. That means mom and pop shops, local cafes, barbers, mechanics, they all benefit. And entrepreneurs? They finally have the safety net to take risks. Startups, side hustles, passion projects, all fueled by UBI. So while big corporations may grumble about higher taxes, small businesses stand to thrive. The wealthy, winners and losers. Now here's where it gets messy. At first glance, the wealthy might look like losers. They'll pay higher taxes. They'll lose some concentrated power. But step back. What do billionaires and corporations really want? Stability. Consumers with money. A society that doesn't implode. If no one can afford products, Amazon doesn't profit. If riots break out, billionaires' investments tank. So in the long run, UBI could actually protect wealth. It's like paying insurance premiums for capitalism itself. The rich lose some dollars, but they gain stability. Politicians, divided camps. Politicians are split. Progressives see UBI as a tool against poverty and inequality. Libertarians like it because it's simple, no bloated welfare bureaucracy. Even some conservatives see potential, framing it as a family values policy that strengthens households. But others? They fear it. Why? Because UBI shifts loyalty. If citizens depend less on politicians for welfare crumbs, they gain independence. That means less leverage for those in power. Some politicians will ride UBI as a campaign rocket. Others will bury it to protect their grip. Workers, a mixed bag. For some workers, UBI is a blessing. Gig workers, freelancers, contract employees all get stability. People in dangerous, exhausting jobs finally have choices. But for others, UBI feels like a threat. Imagine you've worked 40 years grinding every day. Suddenly people get money for free. Resentment brews. This cultural clash is real. Some will see UBI as justice, others as an insult to their hard-earned struggle. Bureaucracies, the silent losers. Here's a group that doesn't get talked about, bureaucrats. Right now, welfare systems are massive. Layers of administration, caseworkers, forms, red tape. UBI threatens to replace huge chunks of that. Direct deposits mean less bureaucracy. For citizens, that's a win. For the bureaucracies themselves, that's a loss of jobs, budgets, and influence. Expect resistance. Media and culture, the narrative war. Winners and losers aren't just about money, they're about stories. The media will play a huge role. Some outlets will paint UBI as salvation, others will brand it as socialism, laziness, economic suicide. Culture wars will rage. Expect memes, debates, viral clips of people spending UBI on things critics hate. In the battle for public opinion, perception will be everything. The global divide. On a global scale, UBI could deepen divides. Rich nations can afford generous programs. Poorer nations may struggle. That means UBI could widen the gap between countries, unless global wealth redistribution, carbon dividends, or international funds step in. Winners. citizens of wealthy countries. Losers, those left out of the UBI revolution. Who will fight back? Let's be blunt, not everyone will welcome UBI. Corporations fearing higher taxes. Landlords worried tenants will demand better conditions. Political elites afraid of losing control. Cultural critics who see UBI as rewarding laziness. The fight won't just be economic, it'll be ideological, emotional, a battle over values. Winners versus losers, the big picture. So who wins? The poor, the middle class, small businesses, society at large. Who loses? Those who hoard concentrated power, bureaucracies built on gatekeeping, politicians who thrive on control. But remember this, every major shift in history has winners and losers. The printing press, the internet, the industrial revolution. UBI is no different. Universal basic income isn't just about cash, it's about power. It redistributes not just dollars, but dignity, and that means the battle for UBI will be fierce. But there's one force looming over everything we've talked about so far. Technology, AI, robots. The machines aren't coming, they're already here. In the next session, we'll explore the deep connection between UBI and automation. Will robots take all our jobs? And if they do, is UBI the only thing standing between us and collapse? Now let's consider the tech connection, AI, robots, and the jobless future. Picture this, a self-driving truck glides down the freeway. No driver, no paychecks, no coffee breaks, just algorithms and sensors. Inside a law office, AI drafts contracts in seconds that once took paralegals hours. In a fast food joint, robots flip burgers, fry fries, and take orders. In a newsroom, artificial intelligence churns out breaking news articles before a human reporter can even grab coffee. This isn't the future, this is now. So here's the burning question. If machines can do the work, what happens to us? And is universal basic income the only thing standing between humanity and mass unemployment? Let's dig in. History is full of job disruptions. The loom replaced weavers, the tractor replaced farmhands, the assembly line replaced artisans. But here's the pattern. In the past, machines replaced muscle, and humans shifted into jobs using minds. Now, machines replace minds too. Algorithms trade stocks. AI writes code. Chatbots handle customer service. Robotics assemble cars, deliver packages, even perform surgery. And this wave is faster, broader, and scarier than anything before. Let's take just one example, truck driving. In the US, nearly 3.5 million people drive trucks for a living. Add in gas stations, motels, diners, entire economies orbit around long-haul drivers. Now, insert self-driving technology. Companies are testing 18-wheelers that can drive coast to coast without stopping. No pay, no sleep, no unions. What happens to millions of workers if those jobs vanish? This is why tech leaders like Elon Musk warn, we will need UBI, because once jobs like trucking disappear, they don't come back. Here's the plot twist. It's not just blue-collar jobs on the line. For decades, we thought safe careers were things like accounting, law, medicine, journalism. Not anymore. AI lawyers already analyze case law faster than junior associates. AI doctors can detect cancer from scans with higher accuracy than radiologists. AI journalists generate sports and finance articles in seconds. No sector is immune. The shock isn't that robots replace workers, it's that robots replace everyone. Think of the job market like a video game. Every time technology levels up, humans must adapt. The Industrial Revolution forced workers off farms into factories. The computer revolution pushed people into offices. But now, AI is leveling up faster than humans can retrain. By the time you finish school for a safe job, AI may already do it better. That's why UBI enters the chat, not as a luxury, but as a safety net for a game that keeps glitching. The optimist versus the pessimist. Now let's be fair. Not everyone thinks automation equals doom. Optimists say new industries will emerge, just like we didn't predict app developers, social media managers, or drone operators 50 years ago. The jobs of tomorrow will surprise us. Pessimists say, sure, new jobs will appear, but not enough, and not for everyone. UBI becomes the bridge, a way to survive uncertainty while society retools. But here's where things get deep. If machines do everything, what does it mean to be human? Work has defined us for centuries. It's not just income, it's identity. Ask someone, who are you? They'll often answer with a job. I'm a teacher. I'm a mechanic. I'm a designer. What happens when machines do all of that? UBI forces us to rethink purpose. Not as worker bees, but as creators, learners, caregivers, dreamers. Think of UBI as humanity's seatbelt in the age of AI. Robots make products cheaper. AI increases efficiency. Wealth concentrates in fewer hands. Without UBI, chaos. With UBI, the benefits of automation spread to everyone. In other words, if machines work for us, UBI makes sure we all get paid. But what if we don't adopt UBI? Picture a society where 20% of people own everything. They run AI, own robots, control wealth. The other 80%? Jobless, broke, angry. That's not a society, that's a powder keg. UBI isn't just about fairness, it's about survival. Then don't forget, this is global. China, Europe, America, Africa. Every region is racing to deploy AI and automation. Whoever wins that race dominates the future economy. But if UBI isn't part of the equation, mass unemployment could destabilize entire nations. The choice isn't whether automation comes, it's how we respond when it does. So here's the truth. The machines are coming, the jobs are changing, and UBI might be the only safety net wide enough to catch us. UBI isn't just an economic policy, it's the answer to a technological revolution that's rewriting the rules of work. But here's the twist. Even if UBI solves the money problem, what about the meaning problem? If we don't need to work to survive, what gives life purpose? Coming up, we'll dive into the cultural clash, work, purpose, and identity in a world with UBI. The cultural clash, a dive into work, purpose, and identity. Let's play a thought experiment. Imagine it's the year 2040. You don't have a job, not because you're lazy, not because you can't find one, but because you don't need one. Your bills are covered, your rent is safe, food guaranteed. So now comes the real question. Without work, who are you? That's the cultural clash at the heart of universal basic income. Because UBI doesn't just change bank accounts, it changes what it means to be human. The sky. For centuries, work has been more than survival. It's been identity. In medieval Europe, farmer, blacksmith, merchant. In the industrial age, miner, factory worker, machinist. In the modern era, teacher, doctor, engineer, designer. Ask someone at a party, so what do you do? 9 times out of 10, they answer with their job. Work is how we measure contribution. Work is how we measure worth. UBI smashes that equation. So what happens when money is guaranteed and work is optional? Some people thrive. They pursue art, science, community projects, passion work. Others struggle. Without the structure of work, days blur. Purpose feels lost. Sociologists call this the meaning crisis. because for many, removing work is like pulling out the backbone of identity. But let's flip it. UBI could trigger a creative explosion. Think about the number of people who say, "I'd paint if I had the time. I'd start a band if I wasn't stuck at my job. I'd volunteer more, learn more, explore more." With UBI, survival doesn't eat every hour. Suddenly, humanity has space for art, science, exploration, caregiving. A society where millions have the freedom to create could look like a cultural renaissance. Here's another shift. Right now, unpaid work, caregiving, raising kids, looking after elders is invisible in the economy. With UBI, that work gains dignity. Parents have breathing room. Caregivers aren't punished financially. Communities thrive. Work stops being only what earns a paycheck. It becomes what builds society. Critics scream, UBI will make people lazy. But remember the pilots we've covered. From Stockton to Namibia to India, people didn't stop working. They worked differently. They worked better. They worked with purpose, not panic. The myth of laziness says people need the whip of poverty to stay productive. The evidence says, give people dignity and they bloom. UBI forces a cultural reframe. Right now, success equals job title, salary, hours worked. But in a world with UBI, success could mean creativity. Success could mean contribution. Success could mean happiness, health and connection. We may start valuing humans not for how many hours they grind, but for how much they grow. And here's where the real cultural clash hits. For some, UBI feels like liberation. For others, it feels like moral decay. Imagine someone who worked 40 years in a factory, busted their back, raised kids, paid bills, earned every dollar. Now imagine telling them, your kids will just get money every month, no work required. Some will celebrate, others will rage, because UBI isn't just economics, it's values colliding. Philosophers ask, is UBI the first step to a post-work society? A civilization where survival isn't tied to labor, where technology handles production, and humans are free to focus on meaning. It sounds utopian, but it's also terrifying, because freedom without direction can feel like emptiness. And that's the cultural cliff UBI asks us to stare over. Maybe the challenge is this: we need to upgrade our sense of identity. We're not just workers, we're humans, makers, dreamers, caretakers, explorers. UBI doesn't end work, it ends forced work for survival. And in doing so, it opens the door to a new definition of purpose. So here's the cultural clash. For centuries, survival meant work, work meant worth, worth meant identity. UBI breaks that chain. For some, it's liberation. For others, it's chaos. But either way, it forces humanity to ask the biggest question of all. If we don't need jobs to survive, what do we live for? And that brings us to the critics, because while some see UBI as freedom, others see it as disaster. Too expensive, too risky, too destabilizing. In the next session, we dive into the backlash, the critics of UBI, and why some people hate it. The critics, why some hate UBI. Let's be honest, universal basic income sounds amazing. Free money, stability, dignity. But not everyone's cheering. For every person calling UBI the future, there's another calling it a scam, a bribe, a disaster waiting to happen. So why do some people hate UBI? Let's unpack the criticisms one by one. This is the biggest and loudest argument. $3 trillion a year? Are you kidding me? Who's paying for that? Unicorns? And honestly, it's a fair fear. We broke this down in part 3. Yes, the gross cost is massive, but the net cost is much lower once you factor in redistribution, taxes, and savings from reduced welfare bureaucracy. Still, for critics, the headline number is enough. UBI sounds like an unpayable dream. Another classic. If you just give everyone money, prices will skyrocket. The logic seems obvious. More money equals higher demand equals higher prices. But the evidence so far? Alaska's dividend didn't cause runaway inflation. UBI pilots worldwide barely nudged prices. Still, critics warn, scale matters. A few $100 in a small town isn't the same as trillions nationwide. And housing markets, already tight, could definitely overheat if everyone suddenly has more rent money. So inflation remains the critic's ace card. This one cuts deep. Why would anyone work if money just shows up in their account? It taps into centuries of moral belief. Hard work equals virtue. But data from Canada, Finland, Namibia, India, Stockton all show the same thing. People keep working. They don't become lazy, they become freer. They choose better work. Still, for critics, the idea of free money triggers something primal: resentment. Another emotional argument: fairness. Imagine someone who worked 2 jobs for 40 years, scraping by. Now imagine telling them, the next generation just gets money for existing. Some will say, good, I suffered so they don't have to. Others will say, that's unfair, where was my check? Critics frame UBI as rewarding the undeserving, as if dignity should be earned, not given. Opponents love to brand UBI as socialism, government handouts, redistribution. But here's the irony. UBI has fans across the spectrum: libertarians, conservatives, progressives. Why? Because it's simple, it's direct. It can actually reduce bureaucracy. Even Milton Friedman, free market hero, supported a version of UBI. But politically, the socialism label is powerful. Expect it to be weaponized. Some critics don't just worry about laziness. They worry about human ambition itself. If survival is guaranteed, will people stop striving, stop innovating, stop building? What if UBI creates a generation content with the bare minimum? It's the couch potato apocalypse argument. And while pilots suggest otherwise, the fear remains that comfort will dull humanity's edge. Another argument: UBI is a band-aid. It doesn't fix the root causes of inequality. It doesn't address healthcare, housing, education, or corporate power. Critics say you can't just throw money at people. You need structural change. UBI fans counter, we need both. But this critique resonates with those who fear UBI is a shiny distraction. Some critics see UBI as a dangerous political tool. Imagine a government that sends every citizen a monthly check. Now imagine that government threatening to cut it if you vote the wrong way. That's not liberation, that's control. For skeptics, UBI isn't empowerment, it's dependence. Here's the cultural critique. UBI could divide society. Workers might resent non-workers. Older generations might resent younger ones. Rural areas might resent urban areas. Instead of unity, UBI could fuel envy. The fear isn't just economic collapse, it's cultural fracture. Here's the truth. Critics aren't just obstacles, they're reality checks. Every criticism forces UBI advocates to sharpen their case, gather data, build safeguards. Without critics, UBI would be a blind leap. With critics, UBI has a chance to evolve into something stronger. So why do people hate UBI? Because it's expensive, because it feels unfair, because it challenges our deepest values about work, ambition, and reward. Some criticisms hold weight, others crumble under evidence, but together they shape the battlefield where UBI will rise or fall. And that battlefield leads us to the next big question. If UBI actually happens, how does it change the entire financial system? In the next session, we'll explore Finance Rewired, how UBI could transform money forever. Get ready, because this is where the conversation goes from survival to revolution. Finance Rewired, how UBI changes money forever. Money isn't just numbers in a bank, it's the wiring of society. It decides who has power, who gets opportunity, who survives, and who struggles. So when universal basic income enters the system, it doesn't just hand out cash, it rewires the entire circuit of finance. From how governments distribute money, to how banks operate, to how we think about wealth, UBI could transform it all. Let's break it down. Right now, welfare is complicated. Endless forms, gatekeepers, eligibility checks. Millions of people fall through the cracks. Either they don't qualify or the bureaucracy eats them alive. UBI bulldozes all of that. No forms, no stigma, no hoops. Just direct digital payments. Simple, automatic, universal. That shift alone rewires finance, turning government support into infrastructure like roads or electricity. Something everyone gets, no shame attached. Here's where it gets wild. UBI aligns perfectly with the rise of digital money. Imagine monthly payments not as paper checks, but as instant transfers to digital wallets. Whether it's through central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, debit cards, or even blockchain tokens, UBI could accelerate the cashless future. Think about it. Governments get real-time data on how money flows. Citizens get instant access. Banks? Suddenly less central. UBI could quietly push us into the next era of money. Crypto fans love UBI. Why? Because blockchain makes it easier to distribute money globally, instantly, with transparency. Some experiments already exist. Good Dollar, a crypto project that distributes a small daily UBI to users worldwide. Circles, UBI in Germany, a system where people create and exchange community-backed tokens as basic income. These are small and experimental, but they hint at something radical. UBI plus crypto could create decentralized economies that bypass governments entirely. Here's a financial truth. Money only matters if it moves. When billionaires hoard wealth in offshore accounts, it just sits there, stagnant. When UBI puts cash into millions of pockets, it moves, fast. Groceries, rent, local businesses. Economists call this the velocity of money. High velocity equals a healthy, circulating economy. And UBI supercharges velocity by injecting cash directly where it's needed most. Everyday people. Think about roads, electricity, the internet. All of these are foundational. Without them, society stalls. UBI could become the same, financial infrastructure, a permanent floor under every citizen, a stable foundation on which innovation, entrepreneurship, and creativity can build. Not charity, not welfare, infrastructure. Imagine dozens of countries adopting UBI. Suddenly, economies are stabilized against recessions, global poverty drops, international trade shifts as more people have disposable income. Some predict UBI could rebalance the global economy itself, reducing instability and fueling growth in ways we can't yet imagine. Here's a spicy thought. UBI could make traditional banks less central. If people get guaranteed deposits directly from governments or digital wallets, the dependency on private banks weakens. At the same time, UBI could reduce defaults on loans, credit card debt, and bankruptcies, stabilizing the financial system. So banks may lose some power, but gain more stability. But let's not sugarcoat it. If UBI runs through digital wallets or central bank currencies, governments gain enormous power. Imagine a government that could pause, track, or even restrict your UBI payments based on behavior. That's the dystopian flip side. UBI as financial liberation, or financial surveillance. The wiring of money cuts both ways. Here's the ultimate shift. If UBI becomes permanent and technology keeps driving down the cost of goods, we inch closer to a post-scarcity economy, an economy where survival is guaranteed, where money isn't about scraping by, but about choosing how to live. That doesn't just rewire finance, that rewires civilization itself. So how does UBI reshape finance? It cuts out bureaucracy, it accelerates digital money, it fuels spending velocity, it stabilizes economies, and it could push us toward a post-scarcity future. UBI isn't just a policy tweak, it's financial revolution. But revolution cuts both ways, because while some see UBI as the foundation of a better future, others warn it could spiral into something darker. Coming up, we'll explore the possibilities, future visions, utopia or dystopia. If you found value in this video, please like, share with those who may benefit, leave a comment and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to enable the notification bell to stay informed whenever we release new and insightful content. Thank you. Now let's continue. Let's look at the future visions, utopia or dystopia. Close your eyes for a second. Picture two futures. In one, UBI has reshaped society into something unrecognizable, stable, creative, abundant. In the other, UBI has warped into control, dependency, and manipulation. The same policy, two radically different worlds. So which future are we heading toward, utopia or dystopia? Let's explore both. First, in the utopian scenario, UBI becomes the foundation of a new golden age. Every citizen, no matter their background, receives guaranteed income. No one falls into starvation or homelessness. Poverty abolished. What happens next? Creativity explodes. Millions freed from survival stress create art, inventions, businesses. Health improves. Less stress equals fewer hospital visits, lower healthcare costs. Education soars. Kids stay in school longer. Adults retrain without fear. Democracy stabilizes. Citizens less desperate, less vulnerable to extremist politics. In this world, UBI doesn't kill ambition. It supercharges it. Humans rise from survival mode into growth mode. This is the dream. A society where money is no longer a leash, but a launch pad. But flip the coin. In the dystopian scenario, UBI becomes a tool of control. Governments distribute monthly payments, but also monitor them. Payments are tied to behavior, loyalty, even political compliance. Post something the government doesn't like? Payment paused. Vote the wrong way? Reduced income. UBI shifts from freedom to leash, a velvet chain. And meanwhile, corporations adapt. Prices creep upward, swallowing UBI into rent and goods. The rich still dominate. Poverty shifts, but inequality persists. Instead of abolishing desperation, UBI becomes a sedative, pacifying the masses while elites tighten their grip. That's the nightmare. UBI not as liberation, but as control disguised as kindness. So, what decides which vision we get? Three things. 1. Design. Is UBI universal, unconditional, permanent, or conditional, monitored, revocable? 2. Power. Does UBI empower citizens or concentrate control in governments and corporations? 3. Policy mix. Is UBI combined with housing, healthcare, and education reform, or left to fight inequality alone? UBI is a tool. Like fire, it can warm us or burn us. So, in democracies, UBI could stabilize economies, reduce inequality, and strengthen social trust. In authoritarian states, UBI could become a surveillance weapon, a way to track, control, and silence dissent. In developing nations, UBI could leapfrog weak welfare systems, creating stability where none existed. Different countries, different futures. Now, imagine a deeper future. Automation keeps advancing. AI keeps working. Robots make goods at near zero cost. In that world, UBI might be just the beginning, the stepping stone to a true post-scarcity society, where income isn't even the point anymore, because abundance makes survival trivial. In that world, UBI isn't just money, it's the bridge from scarcity to freedom. But here's the real kicker. Even in utopia, even in abundance, even with guaranteed survival, humans still face the deepest question of all. What do we live for? UBI doesn't answer that. It only clears the path so we can. So where does UBI lead us? It could be utopia, a world without poverty, full of creativity and stability. It could be dystopia, a leash of control, dependency, and manipulation. The future isn't written. UBI is the pen, and humanity chooses how to write. And part of that choice comes from listening to voices we often ignore. the real people living inside UBI trials, the skeptics who became believers, the stories you won't hear in policy papers. In the next session, we'll explore voices of the future, testimonies from people living on basic income. Because sometimes the biggest truth doesn't come from theory, it comes from lived experience. Numbers are powerful, charts are persuasive, but nothing hits harder than stories, because behind every statistic about universal basic income, there's a person, a family, a moment when money showed up and changed everything. So in this section, we're not crunching spreadsheets, we're listening to the voices of people who've lived it. One mother in Stockton described it like this: "Before the $500, I had to choose between paying rent and buying food. I was constantly stressed. With the money, I could breathe. I could pay bills on time. I slept better. My kids saw me happier. That was priceless." Another participant used the payments to fix his car. That small repair opened the door to better job opportunities, because suddenly he could commute farther. UBI wasn't a handout, it was a bridge. In Finland's UBI experiment, one man said, "It wasn't the money that changed my life, it was the freedom from fear. I knew, even if I failed, I would be okay." That safety net gave him the courage to launch a small business, something he never dared to do before. UBI didn't replace ambition, it unleashed it. In Kenya's villages, cash transfers transformed communities. A woman who once skipped meals now runs a food store. A father pulled his children out of child labour and put them back in school. A farmer bought better seeds, and his harvest doubled. One villager said simply, "For the first time, we can plan for tomorrow." That's the hidden power of UBI. It doesn't just feed stomachs, it feeds futures. In India's pilot programs, women especially felt the change. One mother said, "Before, I depended on my husband for everything. With the basic income, I could make my own decisions. I could buy food for my children without asking." UBI became more than money, it became independence. Back in the 1970s, one Canadian town lived through 4 years of guaranteed income. Decades later, residents still remembered. There was less stress, less fighting. Kids stayed in school. People helped each other more. Even years after the program ended, people talked about it like a glimpse of a better world that slipped away. Here's what's fascinating. Across these voices, we hear themes that defy the stereotypes. People didn't blow the money on drugs or gambling. They invested it in food, housing, healthcare, education. Crime dropped, health improved, hope returned. And the biggest surprise? Many people used the income not to quit jobs, but to find better ones. UBI gave them the power to say no to toxic work and yes to dignity. Even some skeptics changed their minds. A Stockton resident admitted, "At first, I thought it was ridiculous. Free money? People will waste it. Then I lived it, and I realized people just need a chance." Experiments didn't just shift data, they shifted hearts. It's easy to argue about UBI in theory. It's harder to ignore when real people tell you, "This money saved my family. This money gave me freedom. This money gave me dignity." Voices matter because they remind us UBI isn't just a policy, it's people. So what do we hear from the future? That UBI isn't a magic wand, but it is a lifeline, a spark, a shift from panic to possibility. When you strip away the politics and the numbers, what's left is simple. People, given a chance, don't waste it. They rise. And that brings us to the final session. We've explored the sparks, the psychology, the economics, the global trials, the winners and losers, the critics, and the visions of the future. Now it's time for the verdict. In this final session, we'll ask the ultimate question. Can UBI truly reshape finance forever? The verdict: can UBI reshape finance forever? We've travelled far, from the first whispers of UBI in Thomas More's Utopia, to Thomas Paine's citizen dividend, to Martin Luther King Jr.'s call to abolish poverty directly. We've seen Finland, Kenya, Canada, India, Alaska, Stockton. We've heard the voices of mothers, workers, students, villagers. We've heard the critics, we've heard the dreamers, and now we're here, at the question we started with. Can universal basic income truly reshape finance forever? Let's lay it out. It ends poverty directly. No hoops, no bureaucracy, no stigma. It improves health and education. Stress falls, school attendance rises, crime drops. It stabilizes economies. People spend money, fueling local businesses and growth. It adapts to automation. As jobs shift or vanish, UBI guarantees survival. It simplifies welfare. One policy instead of a dozen fragmented programs. It's flexible, funded through taxes, carbon dividends, automation levies, or digital currencies. UBI isn't a fantasy. It's already working in pieces across the world. But let's be fair. Cost. Even at reduced net estimates, UBI requires massive funding. Inflation risk. Especially in housing, prices could rise if supply doesn't match demand. Work ethic concerns. Even if most people keep working, cultural resentment is real. Political risk. Governments could use UBI as a leash, tying payments to compliance. Band-aid critique. Money alone won't fix broken housing, healthcare, or education systems. These critiques aren't illusions, they're serious challenges. So, we're at a crossroads. On one path, UBI becomes a foundation, the floor on which innovation, creativity, and democracy can thrive. On the other path, UBI becomes a trap, poorly designed, politically abused, economically unstable. The idea is powerful. The question is whether we, as societies, wield it wisely. Well, here's the truth. UBI isn't just about finance. It's about dignity. It's about freedom from fear. It's about rewriting what it means to live in a world where technology can provide abundance. Finance is just the wiring. UBI is the spark. And sparks can start fires. Fires that burn down old systems, or fires that light the way forward. So, can UBI reshape finance forever? The answer is yes, not because it's guaranteed, not because it's easy, but because every time society faces a breaking point, UBI returns. From utopias of the 1500s, to revolutions of the 1700s, to the civil rights dreams of the 1900s, to AI and automation today. It keeps coming back because it answers a question deeper than economics. How do we build a world where being human is enough? Universal basic income is not just a policy. It's a choice between fear and possibility, between clinging to the old rules of money and daring to write new ones. The verdict isn't written in laws or budgets, it's written in us, because finance isn't forever, but the fight for dignity is. So the real question is, will we demand it? Will we build it? Will we reshape finance forever? And that wraps up today's deep dive into universal basic income, a topic shaping conversations all over the world. If you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who might be curious about the future of finance, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss our future episodes, where we continue to explore powerful, thought-provoking, and educational topics just like this one. And of course, we'd love to hear from you, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think UBI is the future or a risky gamble? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.